I'm Aaron Baker from PhoneDog.com, and it's part 2 of the full video review with the Samsung ATIV S Neo. How does this compare not only to the HTC 8XT Windows Phone, but to other devices like the Galaxy S4, the HTC One, and the Apple iPhone 5? We'll find out in part 2. It's part 2 of a review of the Samsung ATIV S Neo, the second Windows Phone 8 device, just in case you were confused. Windows Phone 8 device to come to Sprint. This thing is available now for $149.99 and is available now in the nation's third largest wireless carrier. And just to give you a quick recap of the specs from part 1, we'll go back and watch part 1. But to give you a quick recap of the specs, 1.4 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon 400 CPU, 4.8-inch 720p HD display here. So from a display size perspective, very similar to the Galaxy S3. 8-megapixel camera with 1080p HD recording, 2,000 milliamp hour battery, micro SD card slot, 4G LTE connectivity on Sprint, and then you've got some other goodies, including, of course, Windows Phone 8, 1 gigabyte of RAM, 16 gigabytes of internal storage, and more. We're picking up in part 2 talking about some of the benefits of this device over Windows Phone 8 devices like the HTC 8XT, the Lumia 1020, and more, because very much like anything else, these OEMs are trying to differentiate themselves in the market, and that's what Samsung's doing here with the ATIV S Neo, with a couple of different applications to make it work a little bit better with Android devices, applications to enhance the ecosystem, and more. Let's dive right in and take a look at that. But before we do, special thanks to my partners at Best Buy Mobile for giving us devices like the ATIV S Neo for use in our One Pawed Bandit giveaway game. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working. They'll get everything set up, including your Manga camera, your office settings, Samsung's Now application, and more. So when you walk out the door, you're set up at Best Buy Mobile. So we'll jump right in here and take a look at ATIV Beam, because this is something that's exclusive, obviously, to the ATIV lineup of smartphones. With Samsung and then the ATIV Beam, I can turn this on, and basically it's what you imagine it to be. It's very much like S Beam on the Galaxy devices, and I can come in here and beam pictures, documents, music, and videos, not only from ATIV S Neos back and forth, but also between an ATIV S Neo and a Galaxy S4, for example. So it has intercompatibility with S Beam, which is nice. I can turn that right on, and I can share documents, I can share pictures, and more. So come in here to sample pictures, for example. We'll share that one, and then I can tap it to another NFC-capable device. Now, Windows Phone 8 has tap and send, but again, this works with Android devices, so you've got that intercompatibility element here, which bridges the gap in a lot of ways between some customers' frustration. I mean, some people are hesitant to buy this because they're like, it may not be completely compatible with my Google stuff, or perhaps my friends that have Android. Keeping that in mind, this is a nice step forward. It doesn't solve every problem in the book, but a nice step forward for Windows Phone 8. DataSense is also on here. This is no longer a Verizon exclusive application, and not necessarily as important considering Sprint has unlimited data, but for perhaps Verizon, AT&T, and some of the other carriers that have limited data allotments, you can come in here and see exactly where you're using your usage. App downloads 29 megabytes, people 10 megabytes, Internet Explorer, for example, and then I can set a limit and say, you know what, monthly, my day of the month, it resets on the 3rd, data allowance is 5 gigabytes, and we'll say 4 gigabytes, or monthly reset date rather is 4th, 5 gigabytes, and then I can say, you know what, I've got 4.93 gigabytes remaining. So this is particularly useful maybe if you're giving this phone to your kid or something like that, where you want them to use a certain amount of data, or you're worried that they're going over, not even going over, but they're spending too much time on the internet. This could be something to help you out. And it's just kind of useful all around. So it is on this device out of the box. Then you have live wallpaper as well, another nice application on the Samsung ATIV device, where I can come in here, for example, and say, I want my Diet Snapple to be my live wallpaper and a couple of pictures of me. Well, I can select up to 100 different pictures that I have in my albums, and I can make those rotational on the home screen. So live wallpaper, I'll make it process here. And you'll see once it goes through, I can select this as an option, set as a lock screen, yep. And then when I turn it back off and on, it should exactly set that as the lock screen. So you can see my pictures moving through right now. So right now it's showing that one. Hopefully if I turn it off and back on, it'll show another one. Or if I open it up perhaps and turn it off and back on, and it may be stuck on that one for a certain period of time. But this is another thing. This is a Windows Phone 8 thing I like a lot, where you can set this empty space down here at the bottom to be kind of a bigger space, if you will, for messaging, for contacts, or for calendar rather, and more. So I have mine set to messaging, as you can see. So I get a nice little preview of my text message here, and then down here at the bottom I get stuff as well, including 5 text messages, 48 emails, and more. I can change that around by going to settings, coming right in here and going to lock screen, and I can say background's live wallpaper, but then messaging is what it is here. So this, I can choose an app to show detailed status. So maybe I don't want to see text messages. Maybe I want to see Google Mail, for example. And when I turn it off and back on, you'll see that instead of the text message showing, it shows my most recent email. So you can customize this a little bit more than you can, or could rather, with Windows Phone 7, making it far more functional all around. Let's take a look at the keyboard. 4.8-inch display over here on this device, and you can see all these test messages I sent myself. 4.8-inch display, stock Windows Phone 8 keyboard, no real changes here, but because you're working with a pretty decent sized display, it is relatively easy to, I'm not sure where that one came from. Relatively, there we go, boom, easy to type on. And then also, if you mess up a word, for example, it'll autocorrect. But let's say phone dog, for example. I click right there. I can either add it, or it'll oftentimes give me an option to change it to something else. Wash, for example, rash, ease, relatively, creatively, for example. It is creatively rash to type on mess phone dog. You remember that, friends. You remember that. But all in all, pretty easy to type on. I actually like the keyboard quite a bit on Windows Phone 8. This platform in general is growing on a lot of people, myself included. And from a Windows Phone 8 perspective, the display on this device is gorgeous. And you know me, you know 5 inches for me personally is a perfect sweet spot. And this is not quite 5 inches, but for Windows Phone 8, it gets pretty darn close. And so I like the screen real estate on this device. I find it to be very useful. And that's something, you know, for me, in my top 5 list of things I want on a device, a screen is probably number 2 for me after battery life. So this is very important to me. So you have to evaluate to yourself what's most important to you, whether it's screen, battery, pick your top 5 features and find a device based on that. So all in all, some nice goodies here. Mega camera is another one, and this will take us right into the 8 megapixel camera on the back so we can do some camera testing. And I can come in here and change different frames. We can say, for example, ARG, or whatever that says, ARG. And when I take a picture of, let's say, the Moto X, which happen to be over here, we'll take a picture. And when I take a picture, it's going to creatify it. It's what I like to call it. It's going to change it around here. And I can move around the frames if I want to. Boo! And really change this around. I can change the color contrast if I want to. You can see it's getting darker over there in the edges. And really have a fun little picture. So this is one of a couple of different camera applications that come out of the box in this device. First of all, you get the stock Windows Phone 8 application right here. No real surprises here. You've got your different lenses, which we'll cover in just a second. And then you've got your photo and video settings and more. So here's your camera, half press to zoom in, full press to take the picture. Well, I can come in here as well and go to shooting modes, which this is going to be a lot more Galaxy-like. So if you're coming from like a Galaxy S2 or Galaxy S3, you enjoyed the experience, this may be a little bit easier for you to get used to. Very similar to the Galaxy S4 and some of the other Samsung devices, auto, continuous, beauty, HDR, and you can see even the pictures here are almost identical to what you would see on the Samsung series of devices. So I can come in here, for example, to auto, keep it on auto, snap a picture, and then I can go to the gallery and take a look at that picture. When I'm done with that lens, is captured by shooting modes. All I have to do is go back, and my stock camera application is right there. So I have Bing Vision, shooting modes, Mega camera, and Twitter, and you can of course do more lenses as well. Now I will say overall the camera is actually pretty decent on this device. It's not bad at all. And you can see even zooming in pretty close to the Motorola stuff, I found the images to be pretty nice in terms of overall quality. Let me get this focused in. And let's see, there we go, much better. Overall, pretty clean looking image there. Haven't had any issues whatsoever with it. And I've got, of course, the standard photo settings here, including focus, white balance, exposure, ISO, all the stuff you would expect. It's no Lumia 1020 from a camera perspective, so if you're wanting to do a Windows Phone 8 device and camera is important to you, stick around with the Lumia 1020 because that's going to be your best bet all around from a camera standpoint. This one brings together a lot of other good stuff, including 16 gigabytes of internal storage, including a nice big 4.8-inch display. This is the nicest display, again, I've seen on any Windows Phone 8 device, so if a display is very important to you, take serious note here. The camera is very good here as well. Outside of the Lumia 1020, one of the best cameras I've worked with. I've been pretty pleased with it. It brings some nice imaging. If you're happy with the Galaxy S3 and Galaxy S4 line of devices, I expect you to be pretty pleased with the overall camera performance over here as well. I'm going to do a quick speed test so you can see Sprint's 4G LTE connectivity in the Dallas metro area. Gotten much better in my office, by the way. We'll do speedtest.net here, and we'll let it load up. And it is ready to rock and roll. Let's go ahead and hit ready. And we'll wait for it to do its thing. 4 to 5 megabits per second on the download. I've seen this far faster depending on where I am in the city. I've seen it as fast as 20 megabits per second in the uptown, downtown area near where I live. But right now, up in North Dallas, almost in Addison, I'm getting 5.61 megabits per second on the upload, getting about 3, so still faster than what we saw before in my old office space, but still, in comparison to Verizon and AT&T, they do perform a little bit better, at least right here in my office. But again, take it with a grain of salt. It's dependent on where you live in your metro area, but still, that gives you a rough idea of some of the speeds you can expect to see on 4G LTE on Sprint. Last but not least, I want to talk about some of the goodies you get here through the store as well, because there is Samsung Zone and Sprint applications, and as a result of you having unlimited data with Sprint, you also get some goodies out of the box, which we'll talk about very briefly here in just a second. But you can see Samsung Zone here in the Microsoft Store. I've got Now, which is installed. I've got a couple of these installed. Mini Diary, for example, live wallpaper, shooting modes, which we just worked with in the camera. You get a bunch of different ones here as well. Color effect, fun shot, artistic effect, video trimmer, which is already installed, ShareBox, Photogram, and ShareBox is actually pretty interesting here. You can see share contents with nearby devices via DLNA. You've got Paper Artist, which you may remember from the Galaxy Note 2. All that stuff available for download. And then you have some Sprint goodies here as well, including Sprint TV and movies on Windows Phone, Sprint Music Plus. All of these come with your plan, at least in the basic form, come with your plan here. I can watch live TV and full episodes of my favorite shows from all the top networks. Can't beat that. Apps are running in the background, I know that. Featured, and you can see live TV here as well, so we can watch the news, for example, and I may have to pay for that. Let's see, maybe I can watch ABC. Maybe it'll let me watch that without paying for it. We'll find out. Looks like it will. Wait for it to buffer here on Sprint's 4G LTE network. And so you got some TV stuff here. Now this goes as far back as I can remember when I actually worked for Sprint way back in the day. Sprint TV's been around for a while. Nice to see the support on Windows Phone 8 as well. So all in all, from a Windows Phone 8 perspective, between this and the Lumia 1020 are my two current favorite Windows Phone 8 devices. I think they have a lot to offer. I like the 8X a lot as well on Verizon and on a couple of the other carriers as well. It's a nice device, but from a current perspective, ATIV S Neo is fantastic. Lumia 1020 is fantastic. If you're looking for Windows Phone 8, you can't beat either of those. But like anything else in this mobile space, decide what's most important to you. If it's 4G LTE and a combination of that and a great display and perhaps Samsung's ecosystem, this is going to be a great device for you. If you're looking for that ultimate shooter that takes great pictures, the Lumia 1020 is going to be the device for you. And heck, it still has a nice display as well and 2 GB of RAM. So tough decisions to be had by all. But all in all, this is a great device, and I'm happy to see Windows Phone 8 coming to Sprint. Keep it locked on PhoneDog.com. I'm on Twitter at PhoneDog_Aaron, Facebook, Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker. Let me know what you think not only of Windows Phone 8, but perhaps more importantly, of the Samsung ATIV S Neo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.